All right, we'll go ahead and get started. We got a lot of information to cover today, and I don't want to hold everybody up during the lunch hour here on the East Coast and transitioning into that there and the rest of the country, or wherever else you're joining us from. So anyway, I want to welcome everybody to our overview of the new NIST 2.0. Kieran and I today will walk through the highlights of the changes. And some of the key areas where you guys need to consider what you have to do in your organization to implement the changes, how it's going to impact you. We'll go through some of the key things that you need to consider that maybe you haven't thought of yet. And then we'll walk through our process on how we're going to help you address some of these things, and then we'll take some questions at the end. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A module. I will be monitoring that, and we'll try to address any questions that come up during the presentation when they come up. But if we don't get to it during the presentation, I'll make sure that we cover them during the Q&A at the end. All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Let me introduce myself, Sean Dowling. I'm the Vice President and Head of High Trust Services, vCISO Services, Fed Services here at Accorian. Joining me today is Kieran. He's our Vice President and Head of our Enterprise Accounts. Kieran's got a tremendous background with compliance, specializing in just about every type of framework compliance you can imagine. But his forte here is really working in the SOC, ISO, NIST world. So he's one of our resident experts when it comes to dealing with a lot of the changes that are going on out there in the world that we stream today. We're seeing a lot of these frameworks get updated. We're seeing new things rolling out because of the threats that we're seeing in the world. So it's good to see a lot of the compliance agencies out there finally coming around and updating the frameworks to meet some of the challenges that you guys are being faced with. In today's webinar, we're going to run through the evolution of the NIST framework. We'll talk about the landscape. Again, what does this mean? Why are some of these changes taking place? And then how does this work with some of the new things that are coming out? We'll talk a little bit about some obviously AI is the big keyword, big buzzword that's going on out there today. So we want to make sure that when you're looking at implementing a framework for the first time, or you're updating if you are currently in say NIST framework, that you're understanding what the impact of some of this newer technology will have out there with what you're doing. We'll talk about the updated guidelines and practices that are being issued here. We'll talk about the new sixth function, the govern function, that is now being implemented with the NIST 2.0. We'll talk about what do you guys have to do to transition if you're currently in the NIST 1 series. What are you going to have to do to get updated to the 2.0? We'll talk about tools and resources. Kieran will walk us through a case study, just giving you a little bit of example of how this is going to look within different types of organizations. We'll talk about what we do, how we're going to help you guys, handhold you guys through this. Accorian prides itself on its white glove compliance services, so we want to make sure that it's very clear what we can do with you guys, how we're going to address you specifically within your organization, and some of the things that you need to do. And then we'll give you the breakdown. Here's the key things that if you didn't pay attention to anything else that we said today, remember these key things here. All right, so we're going to kick things off. Kieran's going to kick us off with the evolution of the NIST CSF. And then we'll transition to some of those other topics that we talked about. So Kieran, you want to go ahead and get us started?
Hey, thank you so much, Sean, for introduction. So welcome, everyone. I'm Kieran Murthy, your host for this session on transition from NIST CSF 1.1 to 2.0. Looking forward to sharing insights and guiding through the critical changes in the version 2. When it comes to evolution of 2.0, let's rewind to the year 2013, recognizing the critical needs to safeguard our digital infrastructure. Initially, President Obama issued an executive order that prompted the development of CSF. And this was a call to National Institute of Standard and Technology to devise a plan to protect the national critical information systems. Then in 2014, this plan materialized to the first iteration of the NIST CSF, a guide with an intent to be accessible, providing organization with the fundamental steps to enhance their cybersecurity posture. While initially targeted only for the critical infrastructure sectors in the United States, later this framework has got so much recognition, in fact, gained a global recognition and adoption across various industries. 4 years later, in 2018, the framework evolved into the version 1.1. This update wasn't just an incremental change, it was an essential recalibration to address and to ensure that organization remain equipped to tackle the new and emerging threats. Then the draft version 2.0 released in August 2023 marked a significant transition incorporating the wide-ranging input from industry professionals, stakeholders, and the public. It reflects a collective wisdom on contemporary cybersecurity challenges. November 2023, NIST CSF 2.0 was officially enabled. Since its inception, NIST CSF has undergone iterative improvement, with the latest version introduced in February 2024. NIST CSF 2.0 built upon the solid foundation of its predecessor by integrating risk management, in fact, advanced risk management tools, emphasizing resilience and recovery, and also aligning the cybersecurity practices with evolving technology advancement. This NIST CSF 2.0 can be used in conjunction with other framework standards, guidelines, and also the industry best practices. You can see the mapping between the NIST CSF 2.0 for between ISO 27001. And also, NIST has provided the extensive suite to resource that complement the CSF, such as quick start guides, cybersecurity, and a privacy reference tool, implementation example, and also, as I told earlier, it's also provides the mapping as well. That's the whole point of the evolution of NIST CSF 2.0.
Hey, Kieran, I got a question for you, because this comes up a lot with when I'm talking to new customers, on sales calls and stuff. How does this NIST like apply, or how does it benefit like a small organization? So if I'm a startup, or I'm a little guy out there, is this too big for me?
In fact, this is a great question. Most of them, they ask me that 2.0, is it, I'm a small organization, is it flexible to me? The beauty of NIST CSF is the scalability. It benefits organization of all size, including the small business that may have limited cybersecurity resource. This framework provides a set of actions that can be tailored to the needs and the capacity of the organization. Essentially, it's about making the most impact with what you have, ensuring your cybersecurity practices are both managed and effective. So that's the beauty of NIST CSF, where it can fit in for even the small organization as well.
Good. All right, for why don't we, for a lot of organizations who don't know what NIST is, they've heard the acronym, or it's been thrown around, and they've been told, hey, you guys, instead of going out here doing one of these specific frameworks like a SOC or a high trust or something, they've heard NIST. Can you kind of walk us through what is NIST? What's the overview of a NIST, CSF?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So let's look at the structure around NIST CSF 2.0. It contains the three key components. Let's delve into it. First, we have the framework core. You can see the vivid circle over there, right? Envision this as your cybersecurity compass, comprised of 6 functions: identify, protect, detect, respond, recover, and govern. The govern is the new function which has been introduced in 2.0. Together, these functions provide a strategic view of the life cycle of managing cybersecurity risk. Moving into the implementation tier, ranging from tier 1, the partial, to tier 4, adaptive, reflects how your cybersecurity maturity, or how you can measure the align with your organization risk management process. So they help you to understand the degree of the maturity pertaining to your cybersecurity efforts. And lastly, the organization profile, which you can see in the bottom of the screen. Imagine this as your organization unique cyber finger point, where it is where you map out your current state against the targets you aspire to reach. It's about pinpointing the gaps and charting a path to the remediation, leading to your desired maturity levels. So this is where I am, and this is where I want to be. So you can, it's like a mirror reflecting where you stand today. Then we actively engage in the remediations. This is where action meets intent. In other words, the framework is not just adopted, but it should be adapted to fit in your unique needs. As in the previous question, Sean, what you mentioned about the small organization, I think this is where it answers more accurately. Lastly, targeted profile is basically encapsulate where we aim to be, a state of cybersecurity maturity where proactive measures are on the norms. So, what are the precautions you're going to take? It? How do you make sure that you have the threat intelligence in place? So, this is a proactive measures. What are you going to take? This is the holistic view of the NIST CSF 2.0.
Great. For people that are adopting this for the first time, if you have questions, let us know. If you need like more detailed walkthroughs, Kieran and I, more than willing to sit down with you and walk you through, the bigger picture of NIST and what it means to your organization. So again, today we're going to hit some high level, pieces of where this might work for your organization. We're going to cover all the new changes here, but if you're walking into this role for the first time, reach out to us and we'll spend more time with you guys on is NIST what you should be doing? Should you be looking at this framework? Is there a better framework? Depending on what you do and where you guys live in the world. All right, Kieran, let's walk through the changes with the new 2.0.
That's the talk of the town right now. So let's dive into the more technical side made with the NIST CSF. The major difference between 1.1 and 2.0, they consider the govern function, a new cornerstone of CSF 2.0. Let me give an example. Imagine a fintech company that must manage various digital assets from cloud storage to customer database. The govern function is like the company's compass, directing the precise coordinations of cybersecurity policies and action across department. This ensures that governance is not just top down, but also inclusive and comprehensive. In fintech company, the govern function would guide IT team to align their security protocols with the executive leadership vision, ensuring that practices like regularly security audits are not just a tick off of a checklist, but ingrained in a company's culture. The NIST CSF 2.0 tools act as a blueprint for the organization. They provide a detailed map of how the company existing protocols from standard operating procedure to cybersecurity tools fit within the framework. It's like having a GPS that shows you not only where you are, but also the best routes to your desired cybersecurity destination. In general, tech companies looking to to improve its cyber defense against phishing attack, which we commonly see these days. NIST CSF 2.0 tools would help you to identify the best practices from the informative references, guiding the company to implement the robust email filtering and the staff training programs that align with the highest standard. Uh, Coming to the structural changes from transition 1.1 to 2.0, NIST CSF has undergone 108 to 106 subcategories. This streamlining empower our company to focus more on the critical areas like user authentication protocol without being overwhelmed with multitude of the checkpoints. So these are the few changes which is being there in the NIST CSF 2.0. And if you see the functions have been increased, the governance, a new function, the title has been changed from, now it is more of a cybersecurity framework to the, where you can focus not only on the critical infrastructure, it is applicable for any industry for that matter. It is not only for the fintech, not only for the healthcare. This can be applicable for everyone. That's about the key changes pertaining to 1.1 to 2.0. And
So what we're going to do now is we're going to dive, I think, into kind of the specifics of the changes, and then Kieran's going to talk a little bit around, industry-specific requirements. Because some of this, again, as he keeps saying, applies to most industries, but there are specific control categories that apply to industry-specific ones. So, Kieran, you want to kind of give us a little bit of a breakdown on what we should be looking at here?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So when we look at 1.1 to 2.0, NIST Cybersecurity Framework and its core function let's dive with an example for that matter. So let's take an healthcare industry, a large healthcare provider that maintains extensive patient records and relies on the interconnected systems for patient care. If you see in under 1.1, healthcare categorized into the cybersecurity effort under the protect function, and its subcategory states as a data security crucial for safeguarding the patient information. In 1.1, I repeat again, this is more focused under the protect. But with the transition of 2.0, the govern has emerged as a new function, evolving from its prior status as a category under identify. For any healthcare, this means the governance is no longer just about the internal policy management. It now encapsulates to a broader strategic oversight, where you can incorporate holistic approach of the cybersecurity that aligns to your business goals and, most importantly, the regulatory requirement. This transition from tactical to the strategic planning as well. In 2.0, the significant transformation, what we can observe here is the 10 categories from the earlier version, a streamlining effort that prompted the evaluation of their security control, mainly to eliminate overlapping effort while still covering all the necessary cyber defense as well. In this new iteration, 11 new categories have been introduced. This includes enhancement in the identity management, authentication, and access control. These are the two important critical for any healthcare industry as well, where sensitive data must be tight and controlled. If you see, the subcategories were also refined, 106 in CSF 2.0 compared to 108 in 1.1. Each meticulously revised to provide focused guidance. It doesn't mean that the subcategories are reduced and some of the it has been deteriorated. No, they have combined as much as possible, and they refined the subcategory to strengthen each area, such as instance response and recovery, when addressing the potential cyber incident that could lead to the major disruption in the patient database as well. That is where they're focusing more on the cybersecurity incident management. And in 2.0, they also focus on supply chain risk management and third-party risk management. This addresses grounding concern for many of the healthcare industry with pertaining to how do we manage the supply chain. The interconnected nature of healthcare industry, spamming to pharmacy, laboratories, and also insurance companies. This means the breach anywhere in the supply chain can have the far-reaching consequences for the healthcare providers as well. So considering that, NIST CSF 2 focus more on the supply chain risk management as well. The transition from 1.1 to 2.0 represents the stride on the security posture. They have tailored to meet the complex needs of the healthcare industry or the fintech industry, making sure the data, healthcare data, which is PHI, or the car data for that matter, to secure industries as well. While 10 categories were removed from the earlier framework, 11 new ones were introduced in CSF 2.0. And this is a great opportunity for any organization to reinforce their cybersecurity framework by addressing new recognized areas such as incident response planning and communication, echoing the increased complexity and the connectivity in healthcare technology. These are the major changes. To summarize, focusing on supply chain management, identity and access management, incident management. How do you respond and how do you recover standpoint? What are the proactive approaches you can take pertaining to the industry threats?
Hey, Kieran, I got a question though, because a lot of organizations we come across, NIST is not necessarily the primary framework. In many cases, because they're contractually obligated to do a SOC 2, type 1, type 2, or they have to do high trust, they're going to do, PCI if they're doing credit card. How does this integrate with those frameworks? Is it something that they should even be looking at if they're doing some of these sub frameworks?
Absolutely. In NIST CSF 2.0 is designed to be flexible and can be integrated with other standards and frameworks such as I told you earlier, it's 27001, COVID, GDPR, and etc. It's so flexible you can integrate it with the NIST CSF, and also there is a mapping which is being provided by NIST. This adaptability makes it possible to create comprehensive layered approach to cybersecurity and compliance, leveraging the strength of each framework to enhance the overall security posture. So there is a mapping tool available from the NIST where they can integrate with other frameworks as well.
Perfect. Yeah, I think again we see that a lot because most organizations that we work with, it's a multi-framework engagement with us because again they have to do 2, 3, 4 of these frameworks throughout the year. We try to combine it as much as we can, reduce that audit fatigue that most organizations go through, and again try to as much as we possibly can collect once, use multiple times. When it comes to validating and getting evidence and stuff. So, all right, that's great information. So, can you walk us through now, again, the buzzwords are out there, all the new things that are going on. We have AI, we've got machine learning stuff, we've got zero trust. How is this applying to all that? What have they done to address some of the new emerging technology stuff that we're seeing?
Oh yeah, as you rightly mentioned, emerging technologies such as AI, MLI. So these are the new technologies which is coming in. What NIST CSF they have done is like under the 2.0, they focus on their resilience. So when I say focus on the resilience, it's continuous improvement and proactive measures. So NIST CSF prompts a cyclical approach to the cybersecurity. In other words, the recurring process where you emphasize on the continuous improvement. This means regularly you assess your security posture, identify your gaps, and implementing the new control. For example, if there is any new technology comes, you go back to your drawing board, understand what is your current security posture looks like, and also look at your emerging threats. The framework encourage proactive measures like the best thing what I can say is the threat intelligence. The threat intelligence and also the penetration testing. We always recommend you guys to conduct regular penetration testing because by simulating attacks, you can identify the vulnerabilities before malicious actor exploit them. So look at your threat intelligence. You will get a lot of inputs on that. Conduct regularly the penetration testing activity. Now, on the broader scope, addressing the modern threats and technologies. So CSF 2.2 expands beyond traditional IT infrastructure to encompass with IoT security or the crucials. The framework also focus more on the supply chain attacks as well. That is also one of the advantage of the CSF 2.0. And finally, emphasize on governance. That means your risk management and how the shared responsibility. In the NIST CSF 2.0 introduced a govern function that is basically highlighting the importance of their cybersecurity governance. This includes clear roles and responsibility, and also the shared responsibility, starting from department IT to HR need to be aware what kind of practices needs to be, as a prevent incidents. So by incorporating these technical aspects, NIST CSF 2.0 provides a comprehensive roadmap to the organization.
Awesome. I think, and again, we're seeing this with a lot of the frameworks. I mean, everybody has to be responsive to what's going on in the world. And, again, probably in the past 18, 24 months, with ChatGPT, kind of becoming public use, We're seeing all these new AI, like you said, machine learning, the MLI stuff, and then we're seeing these standards being pushed at a higher level. So it's good to see, the compliance organizations coming back, as I said earlier, updating the frameworks. And it's interesting because again, we've for most of the frameworks, we
Yeah.
haven't seen updates in 10, 15 years. And then in the last like 6 months, everybody's updated everything. Hey, I want to take a couple seconds. I want to walk through the process of what organizations need to do, whether you're currently in the NIST program, you've adopted the NIST CSF, or you're looking at bringing it in. What do you got to do, and how can we come in and help you guys with that? And then we'll jump into a little bit more detail. I know I've seen some questions come up about the governing function, so I want Kieran to spend a little bit more time on that. But as with most organizations, most assessor firms, I've got to get my feet on the ground with where you are. So we've got to do a gap review. We got to take a look at those control sets. What applies to you? What are you doing to meet the compliance of the control? So if it says you got to implement antivirus on every endpoint, do you have it? What tools are you using? How do you know? How are you monitoring? And then you're starting to see in a lot of these control sets, these newer ones, where they're breaking it out. Where before it used to be, hey, you got to have antivirus on your endpoints. Now it's, hey, you got to have antivirus, but you also got to make sure your data definition files are being updated regularly. You can't bypass the scans. You got to scan it every 12 hours or every time something changes. So again, we are seeing a lot of more detail being required in some of these new control sets. So we've got to come in, do a gap review with you, walk you through that control, and make sure you understand what the control is asking for, and then talk to you about what tools you have in place or what processes do you have in place to address that. Then we want to look at your risk. Where are you on a risk base? How are you prioritizing those risks? How are you managing them? Do you have an effective risk plan in place? Then we want to work through that prioritization, develop that remediation plan, if you will. How are you addressing these things? What are the specific things that you should be doing? And then probably the biggest one here, and this is the hardest thing for a lot of organizations. Everybody thinks adopting the framework is the hard thing. The hard thing is maintaining it. And you see this across all the frameworks. Hey, I got there. I finally, got everything in place and we're good to go. We checked all the check boxes. Well, now I've got 250 things I've got to do this month alone just to keep things going in the right, the right order and make sure I'm maintaining it. So we want to make sure that you have a strong sustenance program out there. You're not only looking at it from maintaining your security level, your baseline, program level requirements, but you're also looking at these, doing some measured and managed approach to this. So what am I doing to improve? So we have tools in-house that we have. We work with you to develop these sustenance programs, and then also help you work to challenge your organization to improve in these areas. So again, it's one thing to get the certification. It's a whole completely other approach that requires a lot of effort, time, money, everything to keep it going. You don't want to spend all this these resources and dollars to get something and then not be able to maintain it throughout the life cycle. So again, we want to make sure everybody understands in this transition from a 1.1 to 2.0, this is kind of the process. Whether it's us or any other assessor firm, you're going to kind of have to go through this process. But there's actually meaning behind the madness here. Why are we asking all these questions? All right, Kieran, you want to jump into the governing function? What is it? More detail and why they rolled this out like this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So before that, I just want to say that leverage the CSF resource. NIST has provided a wealth of resources to guide. So we always recommend you to use those resources from the NIST. And this is the new, the sixth function, which is govern. The introduction of the govern function is a pivotal update in CSF 2.0. This new function is specifically focused and designed to embed the governance at the heart of the organization strategy. This ensures that the cybersecurity risk management is aligned with the business, objective and also compliant with the evolving regulations as well. There are a lot of legal and regulatory requirements these days. So this govern function will help you to drive over there. The function facilitates a top-down approach to cybersecurity where leadership plays a very crucial role in fostering a culture of security standpoint. So that is where if you see the alignment standpoint of the governance, so setting the stage where aligning your business goals, you're translating requirement into action, and finally the shared responsibility as well. So that is the new update from the NIST CSF 2.0 pertaining to govern function.
Great. Can we let's walk through the tools and processes that an organization should implement to make sure that they're that they're adopting the framework the right way, but also maintaining, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah. So when it comes to tools, as I told earlier, there are a lot of tools. NIST has provided a lot of tools. Even for the small business, there is a starter guide where you will get to know you can design the structure as per your organization needs and as per your business goals as well. The tools to facilitate the implementation as well. So this includes, some of the privacy reference tools as well pertaining to different industry best practices they have incorporated pertaining to the privacy standpoint. And this is where the reference catalog that links CSF 2.0 with over 50 other cybersecurity standards and the guidelines as well. And there are a few of the informative reference. This is newly added in 2.0 where there is a lot of examples that have been provided that how to implementation examples. So that can be leveraged for any organization to how to implement 2.0. That these are the tools and effective implementations pertaining to NIST CSF 2.0.
So let me ask you a question, Kieran. If say I'm a small organization, and I mean sounds like it's a big deal, sounds like it's expensive. Should I do this? I mean, what's the issue if I don't do this? What's the implications if I decide not to implement?
Yeah. So this is so let me tell about this. This is a voluntary standard. As initially it is for only the critical infrastructure, but now they wanted to expand to the everyone. So in that perspective, so it's organization requirement. But if you don't implement, that's absolutely there is no hard and fast rule as such. But also some of the government organization it says that mandatory for you to go for the implementation of the CSF 2.0. But our recommendation also because the organization should consider implementing because considering the review of the cybersecurity posture, this is the best tool what we recommend from where you are and where you're going to go. So that is the targeted profile which keeps on talking about. So that's what I recommend pertaining to adoption of the NIST CSF 2.0.
Okay. All right, let's quickly run through a case study just to give the people listening here and following along, an example of of how this would look in an organization.
Yeah, thanks. Let's take a case study of a fintech company. Let's imagine it's called as a fintech secure, and their journey to enhance their cybersecurity posture using NIST CSF. So first, what they did was like establishing the leadership commitment. So they began with cybersecurity committee within their executive cabinet. This committee role was to provide a strategic oversight for their information security risk management program, mainly signifying that cybersecurity was not just an IT issue, but a top tier business priority. Then they did an self-assessment using the NIST framework. The company undertook the rigorous self-assessment. They identified the gaps in their current cybersecurity controls from data encryption to user authentication, pinpointing areas of high risk that requires immediate attention. Then after identified gaps, so they prioritized the action plan. Which one I need to take the first priority one? From this assessment, this company were able to identify the control deficiency, and also they developed a risk rating system as well. So whichever the risk is on a higher side, let's fix up those one. This gives us systematically prioritize their response, focusing on the critical weaknesses that could impact their operations and also the data security. And lastly, the most important, whatever been identified, gaining the executive support, which is the most important. The result of the self-assessment presented to the cabinet, securing the support of the necessary remediation. So this crucial steps showcasing to the business that how exactly by implementing these kind of control, your ROI will be benefited more. So that's what gives the self-assessment in order to maintain your ROI. And also the reporting standpoint, this is very important. Establishing a routine of regularly reporting their security posture to the cabinet. This CSF framework as a form of the cybersecurity dashboard, showcasing the real-time decisions on for the executive management as well. As a result, if you see the benefit, what this organization they got is they have got the enhanced understanding of the cybersecurity risk at the executive level. So it's always top to bottom. So top management also aware about what are the current risk and how they have to implement the rest of the cybersecurity requirement controls. Allocation of the resource as well. So what common problem what we see is the resource requirement. Most of the organization, the biggest challenge is the resource. They provide very limited, but however, they can't cover all the requirement standpoint, or all the threats cannot be addressed. So they need a right resource at the right place. So by doing the self-assessment, you can showcase to the management that, hey, I need more resources. And also these days we can see there is a lot of cyber attacks. So we can prioritize the action plans. So that's what this company did. They prioritized action plans. It gives a confidence on your customer as well that you are managing the best practices of the industry, knowing that their financial data, or for example, the health data is secure by the company committed to rigorous cybersecurity practices. So this case study exemplifies how this fintech company leveraged the complete usage of NIST CSF 2.0.
All right, so let's talk about just like from our perspective, from Accorian's perspective, what's our recommendations? What's our guidance points here that we want to make sure everybody here understands? One, why you should come with us, but two is if you're looking at an organization, an assessor firm, or a security partner, specific things that we're going to provide and what services we offer. Can you run through some of these here for us, Kieran?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So as a what we do in general is that first we will do the gap assessment, considering what is your current posture right now. So where do you stand currently? That's what we will be evaluating, and we also make sure that a detailed assessment will be provided based on the rating standpoint from tier 1 to tier 4, where you stand currently, whether you are implemented, whether it's a partial or not. So that is what we will be evaluating. And we provide the detailed assessment report pertaining to what are the actions you're going to take it. This is what our remediations plan pertaining to that. The last one is like a sustenance plan. We provide you the sustenance plan, that how do you make sure that you manage this continuous improvement as per the requirement standpoint. These are the 6 steps, and also a complete attestation from us giving you that where you stand currently.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's review real quick. I want to make sure we have enough time. I know we're coming up close on the end of the scheduled time here. I want to make sure we got time for questions. So I'll run through very quickly some of the key takeaways from what Kieran's talked about today, some of the stuff we've covered. The release date for the 2.0 was a few weeks back here, February 26th. So it is out, it is released. We have the 11 new categories that Kieran covered. There is a lot of resources, reference material that's out there. So you have the QSGs, the quick start guides. You got the CPRTs, things like that. So, and then there's a bunch of stuff in-house that we have as well. So, again, if you're looking for tools, you're looking for ways to implement this, to try to minimize some of the effort here, work with contact us and we'll work with you on being able to understand that. and give you some of these tools and push you in the right direction. So the new function, which is the govern function, and we do see this a little bit in some of the other frameworks. So it's interesting now that NIST is starting to roll that out, where before it was just baseline standards that you had to follow. Now you're actually looking at, they want you to start looking at that measured and managed approach. They want you to look at a maturity-based type of a framework, as opposed to just do this and you're good, do this and you're good. The checkbox approach, which is what it's been in the past. The focus with the 2.0, they've expanded it to include the supply chain and the third-party risk management, categories. But also, we've talked about the threat adaptive stuff. So we're seeing, the inclusion now of some of the newer technologies and some of the things like AI and MLI and things like that. They expanded the scope, which we talked about. They cleaned up, with the addition of the categories, they took out some of the old categories. Again, just modernizing the framework here. They did a lot of detail for the implementation guidelines, which I think was probably the biggest significant change, besides adding the new controls and categories. Make it a lot easier to understand what these controls are asking for, and really, integration of privacy and cybersecurity. And I really think this helps a lot, especially if you're an organization, say like a healthcare organization, that's kind of in between. You don't have a high trust requirement, per se, and we get it. We do a lot of high trust. We know how hard and expensive it is. Is there a starting point for you to build towards that down the road? We always look at NIST, because again, high trust, is one of the authoritative sources for high trust is the NIST, CSF. So we want to make sure, if you're starting at ground zero, let's start here and then build towards that. So if you do get to a point where you have to go down, a high trust side of the house or a HIPAA side of the house, you're going to have that baseline security requirements for privacy and cyber, taken care of. So Kieran, any last words you want to add here? I want to jump into questions. We do have a couple of questions, and we only have a few minutes left to cover those. So any parting words before we jump into the Q&A?
Yeah, as Accorian, we are more than happy to assist your organization in navigating from transition from 1.1 to 2.0. We provided detailed assessments, tailored implementation strategies, and we provide the ongoing support to ensure that your cybersecurity framework is robust, responsive, and aligned to your specific business needs. And as we conclude, I want to emphasize that the CSF 2.0 is not just a compliance requirement, it's a strategic framework that offers profound insight and tools for improving your cybersecurity posture. Now, I would be happy to answer any questions and discuss how we can specifically help your organization to adapt 2.0. So let me go ahead with the first question. I think the first question is for you, Sean. How will NIST CSF 2.0 impact HIPAA compliance for healthcare organization?
Kind of like what I just talked about. So when you're looking at, you're a healthcare organization, and like I said, you're not required yet, or you're not ready to jump into the high trust world or the HIPAA world, which if you're a healthcare organization, you should already be in the HIPAA world no matter what. But NIST can help with starting that process. The baseline controls from NIST, do feed or are incorporated into the HIPAA requirements for privacy. They are, utilized within high trust. So, being a healthcare organization, starting with NIST, looking at it, from that perspective, what controls apply to you, and what level of effort do you need to put in place in your policy and procedures to maintain that is something you need to consider. So again, that's something we would sit down and walk through you with and say, okay, let's take a look at, here's the core, 50, 60, 100, controls that specifically apply to your organization, and healthcare and privacy. And then let's start building from that perspective. The other thing that we would do as well, from the Accorian side of the house, as Kieran mentioned, we have all this mapping that we've done, across all the frameworks. So if you are looking over the next 3, 5, 7 years to build into a high trust approach, or adopting the high trust framework, we would start with, hey, here's here's the controls that would apply and carry forward. So let's just make sure we're incorporating those, because it might be easier to implement some of that stuff now than it would be to do it on the tail end when you start looking at adopting an additional framework like HITRUST. So, so again, I think it's a good starting point. It's the initial stake in the ground for healthcare organizations. This should be where you're starting today, unless you have other mandates to move on to something more like a HITRUST.
Gotcha. Thanks, Sean. The next question is, I'll take up this question is like, what consideration should organization keep in mind when transition from 1.1 to 2.0? I would suggest, mainly the five important things. One is the review process, conduct a thorough review of the changes introduced, allocate a resource, that's the most important, and assess your availability of resource, include the budget, make sure you have the expertise in place, technology, infrastructure. So that is one of the things. The third one is stakeholder alignment. That is also most important because you need to engage the stakeholders across the organization, because it's not only the IT department accountability. This is the overall as an organization requirement. Uh, then the customization and integration standpoint. So have determine how to customize and integrate 2.0 to meet your organization specific risk profile, industry sector, and the business objective. And finally, communicate to each and every employee and provide a training to the person to ensure that consistent understanding. And also, finally, I would suggest that regularly conduct a penetration testing exercise, red teaming activity, so that you can take the preventive measures before any attacker jumps into it. So that's all what I can suggest at this point of time. The next question is, Sean, I think it's more about the health information. So, are there any new consideration for protecting EPHI under 2.0?
Yeah, so again, when looking at it from the healthcare perspective, and again, we dig deep into this with the other frameworks. I think now NIST is starting to kind of adopt a more asset-based approach with some of the controls and some of the ways we look at implementing these controls in healthcare organizations specifically. But if you manage EPHI, PHI data, obviously, we want to look at that control set. We want to see what applies to your organization. But, I think the expansion now with 2.0, from what I've seen so far, is, making sure that, we are implementing at the protective health level requirements that we're going to see from HIPAA, from HITRUST, organizations like that. Even if you're moving into, say, like, if you're doing like CMS and you're having to report, from Medicare, Medicaid data, that's where we'll see a lot of these new controls and these new adaptations of the asset, based controls apply more to your organization from that perspective. So, yeah, we will see a lot more. I think 2.0 will help you again build that baseline to meet a lot of these more detailed standards that you're going to see as you progress and move into a more mature framework, or trying to at least do a baseline adaptation of healthcare requirements with the NIST 2.0. But yeah, I think from that perspective we'll see a little bit more ease of use from here, where a lot of times if you've done NIST and you compare it to HITRUST, NIST is very, very high level, or doesn't cover a specific need for PHI coverage, where you get into like a HITRUST, or you get into a federal standard or something like that. It's so detailed. It drives you bonkers with it. So we'll see. Again, I think this will help again start bridging that gap, start building those steps a little bit easier to get there.
Right.
Kieran, we got time for maybe one more question.
We have two questions more, and we'll try to cover it up. The question is that how can healthcare organization best leverage the NIST CSF 2.0 to improve their overall cybersecurity posture?
I think I'll take that one up. I mean, I think the big one here is and we've kind of touched on it in a bunch of different ways, but it's sit down with an organization like us. Let's do that scoping of your organization. Where does the control base apply to you? What do you need to do? What should you be doing? From a healthcare perspective, let's identify that, and then let's sit down and figure out what processes you have to build in order to implement that, adopt that control, implement that the way it needs to be implemented. Look at the risks that is implied from that control or from your organization. Look at the control sets that would possibly address that. So again, we want to make sure that we're looking at new threats that are coming. Make sure you've got a baseline out there, and it's something I want to emphasize a lot of times, because especially today, again, using those buzzwords like AI and all these new threat adaptive approaches. We can't forget about the fact that you still got to build a baseline security program. You still have to do the due diligence side of this and maintain that. So a lot of this here, whether you're a healthcare organization or not, and this applies to everybody, you need to sit down, go through the control base. How does this apply to your organization? And then what do you need to do in order to make sure that you're minimizing your vulnerability, minimizing your risk in those different categories? So that's pretty much how I would say we would address that approach.
Perfect. That's great. The one question what I see right now is why NIST versus CSI Control? Are certain business better suited for one over the other? This is a very great question. So even certain times we also discuss in our drawing board as well, which one is better. My simple answer would be like, NIST CSF is like a cybersecurity journey, and CSI Control is like a travel guide, right? It helps you to, the journey is like it helps you to plan the overall route. But whereas CSI Control, it gives you clear step-by-step instruction what to do at each point of time, and does not require a lot of prep work as well in CSI. But however, now CSF 2.0 is also changed right now. They have provided, tons of tools and resources such as gap analysis template and quick starter guide. So to facilitate these processes in that way, NIST CSF has been improved a lot compared to earlier. So that's what I can say that.
And just to add on to that, and we'll close out after this, is again, why you should have a security partner like Accorian is to help you kind of navigate that and understand what these different frameworks are designed for, and what the structure is for building that. Because again, just as Kieran was saying, where you have NIST as your baseline, then you got CIS as kind of the more detailed driving into specific categories. We see that a lot. So again, if you're looking at NIST with a SOC 2, there's certain things that we're going to look at, depending on the level of SOC that you're trying to achieve. So again, you got NIST as the baseline, then you got SOC 2 that's going to drill more detailed into specific areas based off of the industry needs and requirements, and what that framework requires. Same thing applies with high trust, with PCI, pretty much everybody else out there, that we're looking at. And then you get to the individual standards. So if you're looking at like a FedRAMP or a GDPR, if you're going to Europe, or you're looking at a state level type requirement like a CCPA, there's different layers to this thing. So that's why you need a partner to kind of come in and help you drive what your overall roadmap in your program looks like. Again, we come across a lot of clients that'll spend time because somebody internally said, hey, I think CIS is better than this, so we're going to go, build our framework, or we're going to build our program based off of CIS. And then you get a NIST requirement, or you work with a partner, and we're coming in going, guys, why did you start at CIS? You should have started at NIST and then built the CIS layer over top of that. So again, it's we're the experts at it. We want to drive and guide you guys the right path and minimize the effort, money, and resources that you're putting towards something to make sure that what you are doing is going towards the appropriate activities, as opposed to doing it once and then having it become throwaway because you've adopted a different framework. All right, so we do want to wrap up there. Be conscious of everybody's time. We want to thank everybody today for spending this time with us. Hopefully this was informative. you've learned a lot or learned enough from this to pique your interest. If you do have any questions, Kieran and I are always available to have conversations with you guys. We want to make sure that you understand this to the nth detail. And like I said, be able to build that roadmap for you guys so that you can sit there and look at this plan over the next, like I said, 3, 5, 7 years. What are you working towards? What are you building towards? All right, Kieran, any parting thoughts here before we wrap up for the day?
No, I'm good. Thank you everyone for your time. And this CSF is currently comes with a lot of tools and references. So we're more than happy to help you in framing those one and tailor it as per your organization needs as well. So leverage the NIST CSF resources. Thank you so much and have a great evening ahead. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.